Football continues to play the party crasher role, knocking off their second #1 team in the nation in 3 weeks. I break down the now #2 Auburn Tigers to give you my Fast Five. Good evening, I'm Sara. Thanks for joining me. Auburn's 26-14 win over Alabama punched their ticket to the SEC Championship for another rendezvous with rival Georgia. Playing the South's oldest rivalry for the second time this season will be no easy task for the Tigers. So instead of my usual Fast Five, I'm switching things up. I'll break down what worked well for Auburn in their first meeting with Georgia and what I think will happen in their second showdown with the Bulldogs. So let's get started. Number 1. The running game against Georgia. Auburn put up impressive running yards against the Bulldogs the first time, something I think that ultimately helped them dominate the game. The Tigers finished with 237 total rushing yards. That's just about half of their total yards offensively. So let's take a look at this. As you can see, Auburn dominated in every category of the game against the Bulldogs. And if you look more closely at the running yards, you can see Kerryon Johnson finished with 137 yards of that total. So now looking at these numbers, you can see the running game of Auburn was the highlight of the offense against Georgia. I'll come back to this later. Now, over to the other side of the ball for number 2. Auburn's running defense. Auburn's defense totally dominated the line of scrimmage against Georgia a few weeks ago. Let me go back to this to really highlight the numbers. Let's look at the left side of the screen. Georgia had only 46 total rushing yards against Auburn. Considering they averaged about 280 total rushing yards a game coming into this matchup, that number of 46 becomes even more impressive. Now, look at that a little closer. Georgia is led by 2-star running backs in Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. Auburn's defensive line held Chubb to 27 yards and a touchdown, while Michel could only manage 21 yards. Clearly, stopping the Georgia run game was much easier the first time around for Auburn than expected. However, this may change the second time around. I'll tell you why in a minute. On to number 3. Jarrett Stidham versus the Bulldogs. Stidham has clearly improved every week since the season kicked off against Georgia Southern, and he hasn't looked back. In their first beatdown of the Bulldogs, Stidham passed for 214 yards and a whopping 3 touchdowns. Stidham was clearly a good balance to the Auburn run game, forcing the Georgia defense to not only stop the run, but cover his receivers downfield. This helped Auburn open up their offense and boast the passing and rushing game. Knowing Stidham was able to effectively move the ball offensively the first time around is clearly a bright spot due to the injury concern of Kerryon Johnson. Here's what Gus had to say about Johnson's status.
We'll see. I think it's going to be a day-to-day deal. He was better yesterday than he was the day before.
I'll come back to the possibility of Johnson not playing at the end. However, with Stidham's outstanding play the first time around, it will be crucial he play the same way Saturday. Now, looking forward to the next number for number 4, the rivalry round 2. In every rivalry game, you will get the best out of both teams. And in this matchup, Georgia has nothing to lose, while Auburn, well, they have everything to lose. The Tigers partied on the sideline following their first win over the Bulldogs. And that most definitely struck a chord with the Georgia players. The way Auburn treated the Bulldogs the first time around, no question added fuel to this upcoming fire. In my opinion, forget the Auburn sideline attitude. Losing to your rival in a total beatdown is enough to add extra motivation to beating them the second time around. Georgia will come out playing with a chip on their shoulder, wanting revenge. No questions about it. Finally, for number 5, how the South will be won. Beating Georgia the first time was no easy task for Auburn, and this time it will be even harder. By playing Georgia again, the Bulldogs get a chance to learn from all their mistakes and correct them in order to give them an edge. There are no questions about this. Georgia will find a way to run Chubb and Michelle. Also, Georgia is going to try and find a way to stop the Auburn run game defensively. With Kerryon Johnson potentially out, that task could be much easier. Overall, this rematch is going to be a close one and a battle till the clock hits 0. In my opinion, Auburn can win this game. They just have to make some changes that can confuse Georgia. I believe the SEC crown will be won in a one-score game, so Tiger fans don't expect another blowout over the Bulldogs. Well, those are my Fast 5 for this week. To get my 5 takeaways and 5 keys to victory, visit our website, eagleeyeauburn.com, on Mondays and Fridays to catch my thoughts. Well, did you happen to catch some 3-on-5 basketball this weekend after the Iron Bowl? If not, we have some highlights from the wild college basketball game. Your national sports update after this.